Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a very important topic, and that is how to handle the hover attempt, the Hoover attempt, whatever it is you want to call it, where the narcissist or the psychopath comes walking back into your life. They come crawling, they come dancing, they come jumping and screaming, or they come whispering. You are going to encounter the eventual hover attempt where they try to get you back or break you down or test the waters to see if you are still fair game. And how do you handle that? And it can even be not only a literal or physical revisiting where they come back to your door, they come back to your email, they come back to your text messages, they come back to your work, wherever it is, you're bound to encounter the hover attempt, the Hoover attempt, however you want to call it, or make it sound, pronounce it. And not only is it the physical, but it can also really be like a virtual hover attempt where all of a sudden, you start thinking about them, or certain environments or certain situations trigger it. This is where we always went. This is where we, went to eat. This is where we went to our movies. This is where you went to eat. This is where you went to the movies. This is where you went to school. Not just them, but you were involved. You might have felt like an invisible man or an invisible woman during that period of time, but it was your experience. Do not downplay it. Do not discount it. Do not minimize or sort of reduce your presence. A lot of people, and I just call it sort of a virtual hover attempt, meaning, where all of a sudden, you're triggered again. It's like they're still knocking at your door, but even if they're just sort of, you're constantly reminded, you're triggered, or you feel that you're limited in your life because you don't want to go to a specific place. You don't want to live in a specific town. Or, maybe for good reason, you don't want to work at that specific workplace anymore. So you have to realize that part of the manipulation of someone who is narcissistic or psychopathic is to make it seem like they are more important than you, that their needs are more important. Their, momentary impulses, oftentimes when you're with someone who is psychopathic or narcissistic, they can be very impulsive, also exhibit a lot of high risk, sort of show off behavior, be very demanding, very taxing on your schedule. And a lot of people think, that they then become over obligated to them because they're so demanding. They might be very impulsive. I'm going to come over right now. They don't give you time to think. I need this immediately. You don't have time to plan. You don't have time to develop a reply, a response. You start reacting. People then get into the freak out mode. They get into the analysis paralysis mode. They get into the self-deprecation mode. Stay out of the hover attempt. Be able to identify it, like in the privacy of these videos. Be able to, what I call emotional forecasting. Know when these situations, when there is the opportunity for the perfect storm. Here it comes, here comes the lightning. Take out the lightning. Here it comes. It can be around a specific time of year, when this is triggered, or specific events or specific times when they used to be there. It's time for you to realize that oftentimes in your mindset, when you're looking forward, you don't feel equal to the challenge because they didn't treat you as such. So it's kind of like people become, in their I am, they become how they were treated. And they don't develop that internal locus of control, which is, and value, which is if you're trying to, restore a sense of self-esteem. If you did not experience that earlier in your life, then it can be, a certain job to do in a certain garden that you have to maintain. It's something that you have to keep up on. It's something that you have to keep from the vines from getting a stranglehold. You have to realize there's going to be certain predators, certain chipmunks, certain squirrels that come at you to try to nibble away at your evaluation of self and your boundaries. And it can be even, that sort of just sort of virtual hover attempt. And so how do you back it down? The forecasting, which means, okay, identifying the feeling and identifying the events and circumstances when this can present a ripe opportunity, and you need to sort of identify it as it comes up. So you're smooth, cool, confident, and you're not in that reactive mode. It takes some reconditioning and retraining of yourself. We also call this reprogramming. So part of the problem with withstanding a virtual hover is to understand that, you were programmed and conditioned to feel a specific way, especially if you were traumatized earlier in your life. You were conditioned and programmed to feel disempowered. That became your I am. And then people can develop an identity, a victim, mentality, a victim identity. They identify, but it doesn't mean that has to be all that you are. And that is important because a lot of people then shrink down their I am as to how it's reflected by these individuals who are manipulative, who are demanding, who are condescending, who will be very impulsive, very concealing of their true nature, take advantage of others. If you've been taken advantage of in the past, you've been duped in the past, it's very important that you realize, I don't want to be, I'm not going to allow that anymore. I'm not going to be walked on like a carpet. I'm not going to be kept in the dark like, a storage box. I'm not going to be lied to, like the, whatever, like your, false news. A lot of people will get to the realization and the awareness that they they do not like being treated like that, and they develop, a boundary and a standard. Otherwise, is a level of, zero tolerance. In other words, this is not permittable anymore. I'm executing a zero tolerance for this. This is the pivot point. This is where we say no. When you're in that virtual hover attempt and they're trying to push your buttons, they're trying to be demanding, they're being hyper emotional. The narcissistic rage, which is very akin to a toddler, making threats. I'm not gonna eat dinner unless I get my binky. I'm gonna do all I'm gonna do all this. All these sort of idle threats. And you might have been someone who then responded to that earlier. The idle threats made you jump. The idle threats, the mean scowls made you, die inside. Tiny emotional swords that cut like a knife. I mean, the looks that kill, like they say, it can be very hurtful. The people who are very demanding oftentimes are very, they're not pragmatic or practical requests or demands of the supply source. Meaning, they're over obligating, they're being too demanding of their supply. It's too taxing on the supply source to be hovered back, and you'll get to a point, even if you've taken them back before, even if you've fallen for it before, even if you have, sort of cultivated that minimized mindset and you've operated out of that mentality and you're growing now, you're able to see clearly, I ain't doing that. I ain't falling for that. I'm not even a little percent unsure. I'm 100% sure. So even if in the past you have been weakened, broken down, you didn't know better, you put yourself at, string to 100, you were in the back of the list, you didn't feel very represented. You felt like the invisible man or the invisible woman, but you just kept on because it's all you knew. That is part or a place or a stretch of your journey. It doesn't mean you're at the same place now. It doesn't mean that you're looking at things the same way now. It doesn't mean that you're reacting, responding to the same way now. It means that you've developed, you've been cultured, you've been educated, you've been informed, you've processed it, and you have a different set of behaviors. This can take a long time. It's like teaching, an old dog some new tricks, depending on how old you are, how long you've been exposed. Did you have a lot of trauma in your past? So you have to realize you have, some specific needs that you need to realize exactly where you're at and sort of, I don't want to say self-diagnose, but understand where your boundaries are and be assertive and enforce them. Know what your standards are, back them up and enforce them, and be able to understand the reason in your, not only intellectually but in your heart, and have a balance of the two as to why you're not going to give in to the ruminating thoughts, why you're going to let go of the paranoia that they try to instill. You're going to let go of the feeling of worthlessness and powerlessness that they try to develop in their supply because it makes them more powerful. Realize that you don't have to look at things the same way. You don't have to have an I am that's the same tone and just sort of carriage, meaning the way your physiology is, the way that you are before. A lot of people had developed to become a person that was pleasing and supportive of a narcissist, i.e. a supply. In other words, they had not only compromised, but they had grown with them. They had grown together. They had developed a specific way so as, to get along and to accommodate. And realize, though, that oftentimes the narcissist, if they don't have empathy, if they have this pathological sense of self-importance, despite all that's going on, it's kind of like, they always want to be at the front of the line, even though their ticket says, place 89. They're like, nope, I'm right up here to number 1. And you're like, what about all these other people that have been waiting, for days or whatever it is, and, you just want to say, blah, 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 I am number 1. It ain't gonna fly, sorry. And so it may be new to you to have to put your foot down. It may be new to you to have to develop, a tone and a focus where you don't react and you don't respond and you don't become a counter force to their force. Realize that these people, as we talk about here on the channel, those people who are narcissistic and psychopathic, who are devoid of empathy or devoid of conscience, these are going to be the people who can be very demanding, especially in very trying times, and try to, basically say that everyone else is here to serve me, and everybody better start jumping up and down and, doing jumping jacks and somersaults and flying through hoops and eating fire, when I say so. A lot of these people, especially if they're used to it, especially if they're used to people on their train who are used to jumping through hoops, eating fire, doing somersaults, backflips, emotional contortionism, whatever it is you got to do for these people. Realize, it's time to give it up. It's okay to let it go. Don't worry about it. The virtual hover, though, can be tough, and, it's important for you to realize, and that's an indicator, that part of you is, maybe it's getting better and better, but realize you need to it's okay for you to have a boundary and a standard, and that you have to be the first to support yourself. Other people then, as you continue, you can use validation here, and then also you'll see in time that it was the right thing to do. But realize when, what I call emotional forecasting, when these situations come up or when conditions are ripe for, that hover attempt, and just be able to say, yep, this is that crossroads, Wimp Junction, This is that junction between negative orderly direction thinking, behaving, and becoming, and falling back, becoming, a counterforce to their force. Get some space, get some, it's you, it's you that is responding. It's you that is in control, and you that are, composed. You can realize that, and I hope that this is a helpful tip, especially in the virtual hover. And it might be very trying, it might be very difficult, but as you do it with repetition and experience, you'll get better and better and better, and then you'll be able to see that it was the right decision. But you can't oftentimes see that it's the right decision until you have stuck with it long enough, until you can say, I am strong enough, I did it, I know what I am doing. See, these feeling states and be states are oftentimes not available or experienced when you've been traumatized, when you've been in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic or psychopathic. You don't get to feel that way about yourself oftentimes. You don't get to feel a sense of valuing self. You don't get a feeling of respect and then self-respect. This is something then you have to cultivate. So it's important then that you need to understand it as we talk about the physiology. It's important to understand the physiology of it and feeling, that being empowered, and I am empowered in this situation. So you need to affirm that and maybe use that as one of your astralmations. I am empowered in this situation. I am empowered in this situation. I am empowered in this situation. And use that as your astralmation. And also realize and connect the dots to when were you empowered in a previous situation. And then recite back, I was empowered in that situation. I was empowered in that situation. Meaning I behaved responsibly. I did not fall for the button pushing. I did not fall for that impulsive demand. I did not fall for the virtual hover. I did not fall for the flying monkeys. I did not fall for, them knocking at my door. It's go away. I did not, accommodate. I did not beckon. I did not entertain that drama, and be willing to, not agree with the wrongdoer, not go, be on the right side of things when it comes to the virtual hover. And to be empowered and not, even if they tout that they are this, that, and the other thing, it's really up for you to decide and your distinction in what you feel. It's just it's kind of like the same thing with, I think a good parallel is people who have been alcoholics, and they might have a whole big friend or group or situation that nurtured that alcoholism or that lifestyle. Maybe they had enablers. Maybe they hit I guess alcoholics, if you've ever studied them, they will hide alcohol. Usually they're into the hard stuff. I myself can't handle that. I can't drink that, but they will hide, oftentimes vodka, tequila, or whatever it is, their whiskey or whatever it is, in some place. They'll hide it in an attic. They'll hide it in a basement. Next thing you know, they'll be doing laundry and they got a bottle in their clothes basket and they're bringing it from, they're going to the garage. They've got it in their golf bag. They've got it in their backpack. They've got it, in a hollowed out tree trunk, who knows where. But, oftentimes they'll hide and conceal and be pathological liars. And then other people in the beginning will be enabling because they don't know the behaviors and the traits of an alcoholic. So they don't know that they're always doubting out to the garage and doing whatever, taking their shots and then coming back in. They don't know how to identify the patterns. But once they find them blacked out, on the floor a couple times, and, they're passed out or they get a DUI, then they go, okay, this is what we're dealing with. It's a similar thing to an epiphany or an awakening when you're in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic or psychopathic, someone with a pathological sense of self-importance. And oftentimes they've been catered to, coddled to by those people around them because they want to bask, you know, in their greatness, you know, because they're greater than them. And so if I can't be the great one, at least we've got this one savior, this one star of the family, this one star of the company, this one star of the the couple, you know, and so they're falling for that, and then and then it becomes difficult, to have that valuation, positive valuation of self if you're not on the right side of that. So it's a similar thing with alcoholics where, I would think, those people then learn what they're dealing with. So it's a similar thing. You have to kind of learn what you're dealing with, learn the symptoms, learn the hover attempts, learn the triggers, learn when the downfall, when you weaken, get some space, back it off, hold space, and I am, and you don't, nothing says that you have to be jumpy and be triggered, who is making that command to you have to be jumpy? Do you have to be jumpy? Do you have to be triggered? Do you really have to be? Or is it okay to not be triggered? Is it okay to not be impulsive and be a counterforce to their force, this hover attempt? Oh, I should call and see how they're, all these virtual hover attempts. Don't give in, be firm, hold your ground, hold your I am, and be cool, and be glad, and be, have the courage and have the confidence to say I am, and that I deserve better, and I know what is right in the situation, and be able to own that statement and be able to back it up and be able to do this with repetition and experience, and then with time you'll see and understand that you made the right decision. And especially if you can hear that from yourself, not only others, but once you can hear that and know that from your own heart, you'll know you're on the path. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day.